Hello, and welcome to the Friday live stream. If you're Thomas and you're watching, and you asked if we were going to get double this week, I guess you are. We're also trying a new setup, and I know in the past when I've said we're trying a new setup, it has failed miserably, but we have this new dock for the computer, and we're going to see if it works better. I thought I bought a different one than I did, but this one came, and it is in fact the one I ordered. I was back and forth. So anyway, this is a new one, and hopefully it'll work a lot better than the last one did that froze all the time. It hasn't been doing that lately, but we'll see what we see. So I'm going to ask you over and over again during this to ask questions, but we're going to do something a little less planned than normal. I know it's normally not very planned anyway, but we're going to kind of wander our way through the basics that I think really almost every instrument should work on. Classical, jazz, doesn't matter. And we're also going to work our way into improvising. And we're going to do them kind of simultaneously, right? So I haven't warmed up really. That's not true. I did a little bit of a warm up, maybe 20 minutes, but I'm not very warmed up. And I'm mostly going to just play the trumpet unless there's a reason to play a lead pipe or something. And there are some in here. But, okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to go over the basic components that, and there may be more than I list here, but the basic components that I can think of that I think really stand out to me when someone does them well. A professional trumpet player has all these things taken care of all the time. And, okay, sometimes one of them might fail or something. That's fine. We all make mistakes. But an amateur doesn't work on these enough or hasn't mastered these enough, right? So what are they? Sound. Easy one, right? What you sound like. Time, intonation, style, flexibility, range, and consistency. And sometimes I call these the 3 T's, which would be tone, time, and intonation and style. I've talked about that recently on livestream. But there's more than that. There's also, like, your ability to be flexible on the trumpet is not really any of those things, right? It has to do with time and intonation and sound, and sometimes style. But range and flexibility are inextricably linked. And so, working on one might work on the other, but they're not sound, time, intonation, and style either. And then consistency maybe is the secret 5th T, and just being able to do it over and over again. So we're going to work on all of these things, but we also want to work on improvising. So improvising, we've talked about it on the channel before, different methods. I've walked you through my beginner, like, 6th, 7th, 8th grade version where you just kind of make sounds and try to work out what sounds you like and then play those more. We've worked it backwards through the like scales and arpeggios and sort of a basic understanding of theory. We're going to use that method kind of today, but I'm just going to do all the intervals, and we can do all the intervals while we do sound and time and intonation. We can sort of try for style, but I think I'm going to wait for style to sort of add that on as it seems appropriate. And we're also going to improvise in not just a jazz style, but a classical style, actually mostly a classical style. And you'll see one of my favorite warm-up things to do is to just improvise a melody that's in different styles. I learned this from my teacher at the Paul a long time ago now. And basically, you just try for, 3 or 4 minutes, right? Turn my timer on so I don't go over. Just making stuff up, and it really tests your ability to have your ear and your fingers linked together, as well as your ability to hear intervals that you want to play and then execute them, right? Which comes back to consistency and sometimes flexibility, and maybe style is a part of that too. So we're going to do all that. Enough talking, but if you are watching and you have questions, I don't see if, let me see if I can find my, yeah, there is a person. Let me get it so I can see how many people there are, and then we'll go ahead and get started. A little smaller there. There we go. Okay. So, let's start with sound, because sound is, in some ways, the most basic component. We always have a sound, whether we are having a good sound or a bad sound. There's a sound coming out, or else we're not playing the trumpet, right? So, let's do that first. And I could just do long tones, right? But okay, we also have the other thing that we're going to do, which is the intervals. And so a traditional long tones, right, I might just do half step down and back up again. Okay, well, It just so happens that regular long tones give me every note to every other half step down for the entire range that I do the long tones. So that's pretty good as far as a start to getting every interval. If I want to do every interval, every note to every other note, so in other words, starting on every note, doing every interval, there's a lot of ways to do that. I could use the Arbenz book, but so if you need a resource, go ahead, get out the Arbenz book, get out there's an intervals section of the Arbenz book that does just this, right? It goes downward to all the different notes, upward to all the different notes, it transposes that to every key. That would be a great place to start. But you can also just do it sort of off the dome here and say, all right, well, what's a half step away from G? Well, it's F sharp and it's A flat. Both of those are a half step away. Great. Okay, what about a whole step away from G? And you can find other resources for this. This sounds like, Remington, right? It does like this. Right? Just down further and further, and then a lot of people restart on C when they get there and do that next tritone. There's literally hundreds of books, so that this is not unique. So you can do it without a book, or you can choose any book. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going to do it without a book. I just have my notes on the stand here, not music notes, but practice notes. I'm actually going to incorporate all this into my website when I actually build it, and I want it to be sort of a choose your own adventure trumpet self-guided trumpet study, right? So you can decide what you want to work on, and it guides you to the resources that I have for those things. So anyway, we're going to start on G. We're going to do long tones, but I'm going to do both up and down long tones, and I'm just going to work through all of the notes from G all the way down to low G. And if you have questions during that time, please write them in the chat because I'll see them and maybe I can answer them. But here we go, just intervals, long tones, and we're working on sound, right? And we're working on just half steps. And I'm going to use a metronome so I can work on time. And I'm going to use a tuner so that I can work on intonation. It should be really easy to get a half step, right? Check it out with your metronome. You might be not being as nails as you think on your half step intonation. So I'm just going to put this over here to the side. I know you won't be able to see it. That's probably a good thing for me because you'll unsubscribe. Okay, and let's just do 80 is good, right? You can barely hear that probably. Yeah, it's as loud as it goes today. Okay, here we go. As you do these, if you're following along, notice when the pitch goes up and when the pitch sags. And if it's on when you get to a certain note, if that's sharp or flat, okay, that's one thing. But also over the course of the breath, right? My pitch tends to go sharp as I go because my air isn't as good and my lips tighten up. That's not okay. Also, you can hear it in the sound. So pay attention to each of these things and you might write them down. Sound. Time is sort of, because we have the metronome, I don't probably have to pay too much attention, but maybe. And intonation, right? And so I'm listening for the sound to be good, and then I'm making sure the intonation is on by looking at the tuner. I'm listening for the consistency of sound. I don't want it bobbling all around like mine tends to do if I'm not supporting well. So those are all the things. I'm going to just do them now. I probably won't. We'll chime back in a moment, but let's see, let's get a few of them done at least. So that E was really high. And part of it is because it's a sharp fingering on the trumpet, right? Anytime you combine any two valves, no matter what they are, unless it's 2 and 3, you're going to be sharp. But I was adjusting already. I pulled out my tuning slide because the F was sharp, and that should be, if anything, a flat note. But each little adjustment of your embouchure makes a difference to the tuner. And you don't want to get too obsessed with it, where you're constantly worried about exactly the aperture. But this exercise is designed to set it up well so that you're just breathing and blowing and not worried about this. And so this is the time to make those adjustments and to maybe think very lightly about them. Like, oh, it's sharp, so I might be a little tight. Or, okay, maybe I need to keep my tongue position low. If I want that tightness so they get instant response, I'm going to have to change somewhere else. So, just kind of measure what does Charlie Schluter say in his book? Checking the templates, yeah, is what he does. And that's kind of what we're doing. We want to just check all the templates. Like, is that the way that I want that to work? Is that the way that I want that to sound? Is that the way that I want intonation to be? So anyway, continuing on. So we made it to C, and I'm still tending towards sharp. And I don't want to keep pulling out because there's a thing that happens. I talk about this a lot with band programs, that when your band director or whoever it is that's tells you you're sharp, pull out. A lot of times what you hear in your ear is more important, and it's already preset then. So what you're doing is you're matching the pitch that you just left, even though you know that's the wrong one because you were just told it's sharp. But your ear doesn't understand that. It doesn't mean anything to your ear. You just want to match. And so, I mean, you can flatten it. It means that to your ear, but you have to hear that first. And so what happens is you pull out, but then you tighten up your lips to continue playing the same pitch. And it actually gets sharper because you lose more and more control as you get a weirder and weirder setup. So that might be happening to me a little bit. I'm going to try to relax into this low register a little bit more. And I'm going to try to tighten up my corners instead of the inside of my lips. But that might not work, in which case I just need to lower my tongue position or something, right? I don't need to know what it is. I just need to fix it. So I'm going to keep going. I have a question, and I will answer it in a moment. Thank you, Robbie. Okay, so I tend to run out of air faster as I go lower, and that's because I'm dropping my jaw and opening up my aperture too much. And so what I might do for that, and this sort of answers Robbie's question that I haven't even told you yet, is I need to play with one setup that's going to rule the entire range of the trumpet. Now, right now we're just working on tone and intervals, but I might consider starting with some intervals that are larger so that I can make sure that I can play all the notes with them. I like half steps because it doesn't make me feel like I have to change notes, but we do need a little bit better sort of setup. So you noticed right there, what I did was I went up an octave, I played the fifth as a bridge sort of in between, and then I just kind of bent it down until I found the spot where that would work. And it's usually opening up in the back of my tongue position and holding here better. So that will help me in the long run because when I go to larger intervals, especially larger than an octave, I'm going to need a setup that I can actually trust and rely on. And that's what Robbie is asking. Any tips or exercises for making large, fast intervals feel closer? They don't ever feel close. You just get good at them. And in that sense, they do feel closer. They feel, you don't feel like the range is like you're jumping over a skyscraper. You feel more like you're jumping over a regular high jump, and that you're trained to do that, right? In other words, it's not a superhuman, Superman kind of feat. It's a normal, well, normal is not the right word. It is an extraordinary feat that a human can do if they train, right? And so I like to think of it that way because if I'm not in good shape, it's probably not going to happen for me. But okay, so we've done long tones, we've done half steps. Now let's get to whole steps. Well, how can we do whole steps? Well, there's lots of ways. Again, I can do different things, but and we don't have to go in order. I could do thirds next, right? So that I could do slurs, or I could do Vince slurs so that I would get all the thirds in the middle and top of the staff and some fourths as they go down and fifths. But I want to stick to just like progressively increasing the interval. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to just play our whole tone scale. If you don't know your whole tone scale, look it up. It's easy if you practice it, right? Just like anything. And there are only 2 of them, which is great news because there's not 12 of them like there are major and minor scales, or 48 of them if you count those scales differently, right? There's just the 2, and that's the one that starts on C and the one that starts a half step away from C, maybe C sharp or B. Those are the same one, right? And it just goes up by a whole tone every time, 2 half steps, right? So that's going to give me what? Well, I'm going to get a sense of I don't want to change, and exactly what Robbie just asked about. I want to keep one embouchure that's going to work for, like, let's say an octave for now, right? I'm not going to go any further than that because we're going to get into it. But so let's try that. Let's go downward from sort of a medium note, and then we'll see if we can also go upward from there. So this is like maybe change to say the same scales, but I'm working now on keeping my sound, right? We worked on our time. We can bring time back later. But this is going to be a little bit of range, and I also want my interval to be consistent. So I'm going to keep the tuner on, and I want to see it drilling the 0 on my metronome, even on bad notes like C to D to E to F sharp, right? That's what I'm going for. So here we go. I forgot I was supposed to be playing a whole tone scale for a second. I was so obsessed with keeping the embouchure and making sure the intonation was good. But now we've played a whole tone scale. So now let's play the other one. Let's play starting on B, going up to C sharp and going down. So the answer there, to start to answer Robbie's question, sorry, I did the same thing I did before, but my brain's just hardwired to play major scales first. Sorry. But that's a different way, right? I'm combining half steps and whole steps, and so that's maybe not what we said we would do, but it is fine. But what I'm trying to do with these octave slurs is I'm trying to connect these two notes together through a major scale or a chromatic scale. That's another way we could have played half steps, right? I could be using the Clark book for this too, right? I could be playing the intervals in order in the Clark book. And that's another book, right, that of thousands that we could potentially use to do intervals. But I'm just trying to connect these octaves so that I'm playing them on one embouchure, and I'm really trying hard to play with one jaw position, which is not everybody's cup of tea. You don't have to play with a fixed jaw, but if I do, then I gain access to the same colors and more control than if I did it any other way. And so that's basically what we're trying to do there. All right. And I think there's a good place for my tune slide. I don't want to keep pulling it out just because I keep playing sharp. That's probably a setup here that I need to fix. And as we extend into the high register, we'll find out, because it'll be really a struggle to play into the high register if it's too open or too tight. And so then we need to adjust, hopefully before then, though. All right, so what can we do next? Well, why don't we try thirds, right? But now I could do... Well, I could do lots of things, right? I could do the diatonic thirds of like a scale in thirds, and I could do all my major scales in thirds so that I get all the different intervals to all the other notes, right? We want something that's efficient. So I mean, I could just go like starting on C. So there's an E flat, and then there's an E, and then there's an A, and there's an A flat, right? Go both directions. Or I could always go up, so because eventually I'm going to hit A flat on the way up, and so I'll get A flat and C. And so I could go chromatically. So let's try, I'll try that. I don't know that I can do it off the top of my head, but that means that that's probably a good thing for me to do. Because remember, now we're trying to connect the ear to the fingers. And ultimately, how's this going to add up into intonation, or improvising, excuse me. Well, if I can hear a thing and then my fingers know how to play the thing comes out the bell. If I can't hear a thing, doesn't matter what I do, but if I can hear a thing and my fingers aren't really sure, then I'm going to hesitate, or they're going to play the wrong thing, and then something will come out of the bell, but maybe not what I wanted. And so we're just trying to sort of abstractly work on those components, the same way that you might just play every note to every other note on a piano, right? And when we get to the larger intervals, that becomes physical and a consistency and accuracy issue as well. And so then we need to address that in our fundamentals, right? But we're not going to do that today. We're just playing all the intervals. So here's all the, let's see, I'll do all of the minor thirds chromatically if I can figure that out. Got some junk in my mouthpiece, and we're finding that like slightly not quite set up right lip position, and just as I said we would, right there. So this is great. So now we're here, and now maybe I can do major and minor thirds to try to get myself sort of lip trills around this area, and then we'll let them be whole steps as I get in there. So this is more of a flexibility thing, which we said we would work on. So I'm getting a little more like spitty crud in my sound. A lot of that's just that there's too much spit in my mouth. And so it's getting to the lip. And I probably need to just drink more water so that it goes somewhere else. But okay, we're getting some flexibility now. And I would go ahead and do like a whole set of Vinslers if I was doing a real warm up, but this is sort of a wandering, like we said, warm up. And so I'm starting to get, I'm finding like, oh, my high range isn't really set very well because my flexibility is not working very well. So I need to work on that, but I don't want to get worn out. Okay, what can I do? What can I do? Well, I mean, lots of things, right? I could play, I could do more lip slurs in the staff. I could just rest. But what I'm going to do is improvise. I've got 3 intervals now, well, 4 almost, right? I've got a half step, I've got a major second, I've got a minor third, and I've got a major third. And I guess we played an octave, technically. So, okay, fine, let's use all of those things, right? And what I can do is I can take my, so you'll need a little theory knowledge for this whole lesson if you didn't already catch on to that, because I'm already talking about intervals. But if you're not aware of like a set class theory, basically it's just a set of intervals, okay? So that's what we have right now. I have a set of half step, I've got whole step, I've got minor third, I've got major third, and I've got octave, which doesn't really count in set class theory because it's the same note, right? So that means I've got 0, 1, right? 0 is the starting note, whatever note I start on, and I can go 1 half step away from that. I can do 2 half steps, 3 half steps, and 4 half steps. And that's it. Now, usually a cell, a sort of set class group, or a set class, right, is a set of intervals that has a fixed length. And so we might have like 0, 1, 3, 4, right? So that would sound like... I know that doesn't sound like anything much, but it's a way to label things in a normal order so that we can analyze things. And so what I'm going to do with it instead is, I think, much more interesting to do anyway, and that is I'm just going to play sounds, so in other words, a set class, and I'm going to move those sounds around, and I'm just going to improvise around that sound. And it doesn't matter what starting note I play. In fact, I want to move it around a lot because I want to know that when I hear the sound, I can play the sound. And so we're going to start with a simple sound. So I'm just going to start with half steps, and then I'm going to expand that to whole steps maybe, and maybe combine them, half steps and whole steps. And you'll hear, but then I want to try to move the thing around. And that doesn't mean I have to play it in the exact same order. I could play it backwards or forwards. I could mix it up, right? It's still going to be the same set of intervals, same set of notes with the same vector intervals, right? So here we go, a little improvise. And why am I doing this? Because it's getting my ear and my air and my sound all attached together so that I'm not worried about my lip or my flexibility. I'm worried about musical expression and hearing. And then I can go back and tackle some more lip slurs. Actually, this is a good time to turn back on the metronome too, because that way we have a sense of the beat that we are improvising around. Now, you don't have to do this. You could just free improv it, right? But I'm going to do 60. That way you can hear the sounds of the rhythms that I do. And I also want to work on my rhythm so that it is, in fact, regular and not just like, oh, I can play whatever I want. I can play whatever I want with this metronome. So I'm just messing around here. I'm trying to get as many of the sounds together as I can, and you'll notice that I often play several in a row chromatically. That's because that's easy for my brain right now to understand, because we just practiced that. I should push myself. I could even write out some guide tones, so to speak, that I'm going to play on E for a while. I'm going to play on B for a while. I'm going to play on, let's say, C sharp for a while, and then I'm going to come back to E. And that doesn't mean that I have to just play those notes, but you could limit yourself to that, right? One thing that I've done on this channel before is say, okay, choose 3 notes. Those are the only 3 notes you're allowed to play. And maybe this is a good thing to do right now. I'll do a short version of it. Those are the only 3 notes you're allowed to play. And you have to make me feel like each one is the kind of home base. So you might do that through repetition. You might do that through kind of not playing it and then finally playing it, right? Anticipation. You're composing, so you come up with a way, but use your ear. Don't try to outthink the audience or the potential audience or yourself, right? Certainly don't try to outthink the trumpet. You've got 3 notes. Those are the notes you're allowed to play. So let's choose 3 notes. And we haven't played a 4th yet. So let's expand our interval series to include a 4th, but we're not going to do all 4ths because it's too easy to sort of make one sound like the 5 of the next one. So we're going to play, how about a minor 3rd and a 4th? No, that's going to be a chord. Well, it doesn't have to be. Let's do B flat. B flat, E flat, and B natural, right? So that I've got a major 3rd between B natural and D sharp, I guess, if you want. And then B flat to E flat is a perfect 4th, right? And then I've got a half step between B flat and B. So I'm going to play a piece only using those 3 pitches. I'm going to put them in the sort of medium top of the staff. I won't use any octaves. And I'm allowed to play any rhythm I want. I won't use the metronome this time. And now I'm working on just sort of musical expression, and I have these fixed intervals. So now we're really improvising, right? But we're using some parameters to fix the set so that it's not overwhelming to me. And I'm also going to turn my tuner off right now because I want to save its batteries. So I tried to do my best, sort of, I didn't want to change, it's nice if you can change the style when you're improvising for a long time in a classical style, right? It's nice to change it from lyrical to technical to maybe even like Baroque, classical, neoclassical, like a primitivism, whatever you want to do, right? It's good to change it up. But in a quick example with only 3 notes, it's nice if you just kind of, finish it up. And so that leaves you with one style. But that was all right, right? We sort of, I would change some things if I was actually sitting down to compose this piece, but I would call that a successful 3-note piece. Now you notice my consistency came into play where I played, first of all, I tried to play an E flat with first valve. That didn't work. Then I missed an E flat that had second valve because I just wasn't hearing it very well. But I cleaned that up real quickly because I didn't want to be inconsistent. And I figured out, well, I should be able to play 3 notes. Well, that hubris will get you, right? And so really listen to the intonation, listen to the middle of the slot, right, of the tone. Listen for a consistency of your articulation and tone over the different notes. And if that one's too easy for you, then try different notes, right? Try notes that are harder to hear or further apart. Those, I think, are really difficult. At first, if you're just beginning, just pick like 3 notes really close together, right? Like G, A, and B flat. That's it. And then try to make each one of them become the main character for a little while. and then maybe come back to the beginning if you want to sort of have nice closure. But anyway, all right, so we've played a fourth now, a fourth. And another way that I could play my scales, or play my intervals, is, like I said, to just play all of my scales in like that interval, right? In the diatonic version of that interval. And if I play all 12 scales, I will have played all my perfect fourths and all my augmented fourths. Augmented fourths, because I will always, somewhere in there, right there, in the major scales, there's the fourth to the seventh scale degree is a augmented fourth. And so I will have played all of them. And that can be a really quick way to do it. I could also play all of them just kind of like strictly, and that would maybe take less time, but more mental energy. Let's see, we have a question. Random and off topic. Is ECU sending anyone to NTC this year? I'm hoping to audition solo with our large ensemble. We're not, because our, we planned to, and the ensemble auditions didn't go as well as I hoped, so we're just not going to do it this year. We're going to audition it again, I guess maybe in the winter, to have a standing ensemble that goes forward. Because the group that I would take to NTC needs to really audition and win their position and have some ownership. And so even though everybody had the music over the summer, we didn't have enough people playing it at a very good high level to consist of a 4 to 6 person group. So I canned it. But that doesn't mean forever. We'll be there shortly, and we might have some solo contestants still. So we'll have to see. I may in fact be there, but I'm not even sure when it is. I haven't looked all that up yet. So sorry to. I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade. I'm just trying to say it should be good if you're going to take it, and so let's make sure that it is that. So to you, I would say, yeah, if you're going to do solo and large trumpet ensemble, don't go unless you're really killing it. Because if you're going to go to a competition, you should win. And you don't have to win, but you should certainly be prepared to. Okay. What are we doing next? So we've got fourths. Like I said, I could do all the fourths. Fourths and fifths are the same if you invert them, right? And so we're right at that cusp where Robbie was talking about earlier of like the intervals are the same but inverted and larger, right? So, and that's something that I really want to do. So I can just do them, right? Let's do it in a more abstract way and just say, all right, well, what if I do all the C intervals, right? C to everything else all the way up to C, and then beyond up to like 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever, right? Let's try that all the way up to octave and a fifth, let's say. So just trying for consistency, and my embouchure doesn't feel great. I really played hard yesterday doing a lot of the similar stuff, and so I got to make sure I take it easy and don't engender bad habits, just because I'm trying to I'm getting obsessed with like, I got to get this interval, or I got to make the sound right, or whatever. I do want to be obsessed. I just don't want to force myself to keep going after it's just going to be impossible at some point because I'm too tired, right? So be careful with this kind of stuff. But okay, we've worked it up to an octave. Now I'm going to rest for a second. Maybe the 2 or 3 of you that are on have more questions for me to answer. I guess I should ask that earlier because you guys are on a 26-second delay. So it takes me the time. It would just be dead air for half a minute. But okay. Now, if I wasn't sure about these intervals, right, I could use my tuner. If I use a digital tuner, like an iPhone tuner, I could use my tuner to tell me what note I'm on. And that would be fine if you don't know. There's also a new app that I haven't tried yet, but I did buy it called Q Music, I think. And it basically quizzes you on playing notes with certain parameters, which is basically the 20 questions game I've talked about from ITG Junior like 20 years ago, where it just says, okay, how can you play an F sharp, pianissimo, staccato? How about that? Can you play a G on top of the staff piano with an accent like a half note legato? Can you do that, right? And it just does that for you. It automates that randomization within the parameters you specify. So I'm excited to try it. I was going to do it on stream today, but I don't have an iPhone like capture card thing that I know that's possible. I just haven't set it up yet. I set up all my new equipment instead. And so once I play with that app a little bit and get better at my consistency, that's what I was wanting to use for consistency. But I'm afraid that my consistency is just not that good, and I don't really want to show that to you. But I can describe to you how I'm going to practice it, and I can show you a little bit, and you can see how bad I am. But I don't want to do that for a whole stream. So, okay. We've done set class groups now, and we've done sort of like every note to every other note. We're going to continue on C, but now if you remember, if I've done C to every interval, then that means I've done every interval to C, downward at least, right? So, or every note to C, rather. So that means I don't have to do any of those backwards again, if I don't want to. But it might not be a bad way to do it if you just take a note a day, like we do with the modes, and say, all right, you know what? I'm going to do all of my, I'll just do it right now. I'm going to do all my F sharp modes, or F sharp intervals, right? So here I go, F sharp intervals, and then I'll go back and catch the rest of the C ones. So you're hearing like, there's 2 ways I can do it. One is I got to get this right now and make it sound good, and so I dig into it. That's fine if I got to do it right now, like in a concert or whatever. I don't got to do it right now that way here in my office during this live stream. And so the ones that sound a little bit ragged, a little bit like the edges of the sound are a little bit like bleeding a little bit, those are the ones that I'm like, nope, it's not going to feel any different. And so to answer your question earlier, Robbie, if you're still here, that's what I'm just kind of saying, like, I know something has to change, but I'm going to try to make it feel like it doesn't. And I'm going to see what result I get. And then I'll clean that up with maybe just adding back 10% of that force that I would have used in the first place. So now we've done an octave and a major third on F sharp. Let's go back and get the rest of the C all the way up to G. So we kind of got it. And you'll notice that going upward is a lot harder because you have to anticipate the type of holding that you're going to need when you get up to the higher pressures without overdoing it and crunching down on it, or underdoing it and you just don't get the note. So a lot of times you'll hear me back off the dynamic and make it glissy first so that I can kind of get that span. But okay, so I can do this all day, but it's, you know, and it is something that you would want to do. Maybe walk around the house, do some laundry, do some dishes, you know, clean your floors, clean your bathrooms, run to the store. I don't know what you have to do. And then come back and say, okay, so I've done C, how about C sharp? And then you do it. But it wears you out. And so it's like I said, you're sort of wandering. And then once I've gotten somewhere, right, well, then maybe I can do some other exercises that are more improv related, right? And so we'll make some progress in that world. We haven't really done as much flexibility, as I said. And so, but you could argue that like big intervals is flexibility. It's just also accuracy or consistency, right? And so I'm being flexible, but I'm also being like precise. But it feels different, right, than working on just like efficient lip trills and lip slurs. So what I'm going to do is answer this question from Robbie while I rest, and then I'll do a little bit of lip trills and a little bit of high range and see where that's at today. And then we'll get into the improvising more hardcore and just kind of step through, you know, triads, chords, modes, licks, melodies, substitutions, that kind of thing, right? So here we go. With Robbie says, what's your thought on using E flat for Einheldenleben? Just got a 9636 and it has a nasty pedal C. Well, as a matter of fact, Robbie, I believe I just got 9636 as well. And I don't know, does it have a nasty pedal C? Let's find out. Maybe yours does and mine doesn't, or rather you do and I don't. That's generally probably the case for us. But let's find out about this pedal C here. Yeah, I guess it's okay. I tried to do it two ways. So if you just drop your jaw open, you get this pretty big pedal C, but it sounds like a pedal, and so you can't really use that. The other way you can do it is you can sort of keep your jaw closed and use lip roll and lower tongue position, but it's still a position, it's not just flat. And you can really drive it in with a small aperture and have some control over it there, but I can't get that to center on this. I'd have to work on it, right? And the mouthpiece you play matters a lot for this stuff too. A straight 8 isn't probably the best. It takes a lot more strength to do it on a small diameter rim than let's say like a 1.5 or something. But it takes more strength to play a 1.5 like in general. So yeah, sacrifice the pedal range that I never use in order to get the rest of it to work a little better. But yeah, these are great horns. If you don't know, if you're watching this and you're like, what do they talk about, 90 something, whatever. It's just the Yamaha Chicago model E flat trumpet, E flat D actually. It has D slides. Oh, wait, did I have it in D? Oh, I have it in D. Well, that's not helpful. But yeah, I played this on stream 2 days ago and said it was an E flat trumpet, but no wonder. Usually the D and the E flat side on these horns are pretty equal. They're pretty good. So anyway, that's what Robbie's talking about. The answer I would say is no, don't do that. Use a B flat trumpet like everybody else, or if you're very clever, some people, what they've done is built a tuning slide for their C trumpet that has a rotor that goes down to, let me get this right. Let's see. It would be A flat, I want to say. A major third, in other words. Because then you can play, you need to play a low E flat, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. So yeah, so you play a low G and the rotor, and that's a low E flat if this is an A flat rotor. And so that is a thing that a few people have done. I have not played any of them, but I have seen them played in professional orchestras, and they sound great. And then the rest of the time you're in C, so it's just your normal F transposition or E flat transposition or B flat transposition, whichever piece you're playing that has this low E flat concert in it. In Ein Heldenleben, some of the parts are in E flat, some of the parts are in B flat, and so, but those are normal transpositions for us to do on C trumpet. You can also alternatively just play it like everybody else does on B flat trumpet up a fourth, like you are doing F transposition, and then you've got a nice low F if you've got a Yamaha, or a Bach with the extra, extension, or whatever you got, right? So, and it's fine to, if you're principal in the orchestra that you're playing and you got a killer pedal C and you want to use it, and the orchestra director doesn't mind it, hey, go for it. If you're playing any other part, that's a great way to never get hired again, because it's weird. And now, if it works, if it sounds good, you can play any weird thing you want. But if it sounds weird, or it sounds even just a little wrong, and then they figure out what you're doing, it's a good way to lose all your gigs. So don't do it. But hey, maybe send me a recording of it and prove me wrong. I would love to hear a great pedal C that sounds, I don't know, appropriate for that. The real instrument that is supposed to be on is actually an alto trumpet, E flat alto, which somewhere around here, probably over there, or maybe it's cool. I have an E flat alto trumpet, and then it would just be a C on that instrument, a low C, a regular low C. And but boy, does it sound bad. And those instruments were not designed to play the way that we play today, basically. So anyway, nice break. Thanks a lot, Robbie. So now we're going to play some lip trills at the top of the staff, and we're going to then play, just really quickly, I'll do a little bit of Clark book triads, and we can go through different ways to do triads and seven chords and extensions. And then modes, we've done a lot, but we'll talk about them. And then we can do some licks. I think my lick book is around here somewhere. Maybe not. No, it's not. Anyway, all right. So here we go, lip trills a little bit. So if you're one of my former students or current students and you've heard me do this, I sound a little bit less flexible on these days, and that is absolutely correct. Not the direction I would like to go, but when you change your dentition, all kinds of weird stuff happens. And what I'm trying to do is maintain even pressure on top and bottom lip instead of using my bottom teeth to kind of as a crutch to get into the next slot, like sort of by stretching my lip across them. I'm trying to just hold. And what's hard is to maintain the aperture. The aperture wants to spread and flatten, and I have to use my strength to hold it, but then that can deaden it. So getting that in balance is really important, and that it stiffens the slots. And so that's what I'm trying to work on here, is I'm trying to make a nice narrow beam of air that works, that doesn't cause me to have to press and spread as much, or at least can take that pressing so that the spreading doesn't occur. If it all occurs, then I just get stiffer slots, and I can sort of muscle it out. But anyway, let's do one more G. So you can see it doesn't really want to work. That's because this piece is too big. I got to shave it down. So anyway, that's what I'm working on personally. But all right, so we've done a little bit of high range. So let's go over our basic stuff. Make sure we didn't leave anything behind before we move solidly into improv territory. So we got sound. Yeah, we've been working on that. Time, we put the metronome on a little bit, a couple of times. I'm not going to worry about it for now, right? Time is important, but you got to work on it every day. I work on my time a lot, so I think it's okay. Intonation, yeah, we did that at the beginning. We're not really checking on it now, but if I was playing an excerpt or a solo, I would definitely be checking on it regularly. Style, we haven't had anything to play. You know, we played some styles, but we haven't had anything to like, you know, play stylistically. So maybe we left that behind, but we'll get into it. Flexibility, yep. Range, yep. Consistency, well, kinda, right? I might want to do that exercise a little bit more times to be more consistent. As a matter of fact, let's do that. Let's try to figure out how to be more consistent. So I'm feeling like the right side of my face is kind of like not holding on as well. And so it's probably some jaw motion, right? That if you move your jaw away from it, away from that side, in order to get response or something weird that you're not aware of, then you can cause a little air pocket and then it's hard to hold. Or sometimes we do the opposite where we move it towards that side and it's the same thing. So let's make sure we're not doing that. Okay, great. So up to the fifth, I'm okay. I'm pressing a little bit into my bottom lip. I wrote notes about this yesterday to myself, so I'm not gonna worry about it right now. That's not the point of this. But it's good to try to build consistency with rest. And if you were doing, like, let's say an excerpt, then what I would ask you to do is basically just sit down, put a timer on, and wait. And then try to do it again. If it's something that's easy for you to do, great, then show me. Do it without doing anything for 5 minutes. Can you do that? Can you do, what about 10 minutes? Can you just lay it down and after 10 minutes of nothing? And then you're starting to build real consistency. We're not going to do that now because we're not playing anything like that. But if you want to talk real consistency, you know, try to, I'll demonstrate it real quickly, right? Here we go. I'm just going to play what would be not a guarantee. How about E on top of the staff, right? That note. So I'm going to play just a nice da, 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 just like kind of a pingy tail accented mezzo forte note. Not even anything hard, right? But let's see if I can put my air in the right place. And then if I can't do it, I'll do breath attacks. I'll make sure that I can tongue non-destructively, right? I'll do some stuff like that to try to just get it to go. And then I'm going to start making the space larger, like pushing it out further so that now I have to remember how to do that, right? And this can be a really tricky exercise to do. I did it a lot yesterday. It takes a lot of strength when you're not sure to give it to make sure, right? And so then you want to trust yourself more, so you're using less strength, but you also want to be able to use that strength when it's necessary. It's actually just, I realized, a great way to use the metronome. Let's do 70, and I'll just count one more every time. So, I mean, you can tell what this exercise is. I'm just counting to 8 and then counting to 9, counting to 10. And you start to develop a sense of, like, this is what the wind-up needs to be in order to get this to happen. So what the timing of that is and how it feels in your support and on your lip. But also, you start to gain a little bit of nerves as you get further and further out. It's like, oh, I really want this to be good. You notice I had to repeat the 5 rest one because I just chipped it a little bit. And that's just, I don't like that. And so, but I didn't goose it. I didn't try to get it harder the next time. I just put it right back in the same place it needed to be, and hey, guess what? That worked. So, all right. So let's get into these improving things. And again, these are all the same intervals for no matter what I'm doing. We've already done a little bit of it, and I think what we've done so far is a great start. So you can shut off the video now if that's already like, you know, I don't know how to do that. Just do that a lot. Do it like at the end of all your practice sessions. That's what I normally do. But okay, I can try some triads. I'm going to do Clark number 3. Clark number 3 is really great for getting all your major and dominant 7th chords worked out. And it's also in a 1-4-1-5-1 chord progression, so that's a nice way to sort of work on them all. I'm not going to do them all. I'm going to do one of them so that we can sort of move on here. But and I'll show you another way to work on them too. And you're supposed to repeat it as well, and I normally do. But that's what it's like. And so you can just open up the Clark book and play all of those. And do it with the repeats. It really gets it under your fingers. And the ones that are hard, work on them more. Work on them slowly. Work them up to speed, right? But another way you can do it is just say, okay, I'm going to play all of the diatonic 7 chords of a given key. So let's try, I don't know, A major. How about that? Should have picked a different key because I can't do the descending stacks all the way down. But I did them as far as I could, right? So you can do that as well, and it works your ear in a key, which is a really valuable thing because when you're playing, most jazz improvisation is in a key for a while, right? So you can sort of see it if you look at the tune. Like a blues is always just basically in one key, right? Or you can think of it as in 2 areas, but they could be in the same key, right? The 1 and the 4 chord are both major chords, and we just use a 7 in jazz. Rhythm changes, which is the only other really standard change, is always in a whole key, and then sometimes the bridge is like in another key for a while, and then, or sometimes chromatic bridge, right? But you can think of sections in a key, and then guess what? Those are the notes you're going to play. It may not be all the notes in every chord, but the diatonic 7 chords are going to be the things that you mostly use. And you can just see that when if you have a little theory knowledge and you look at the chord changes. Hi, Dad, by the way. I got nervous when you came on because I was in the middle of trying to play a basic scale and I messed up. But all right. So what would we do now? Well, I could do more and more of that. I could do my modes. So that would be similarly, I could get the Arbenz book out and do all my diatonic modes. So that would be C Ionian, D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian, G Mixolydian, A Aeolian or natural minor, and B Locrian, right? And then C again. I could do those like the C major modes, right? Or I could do all the C modes, and that's what we normally do on this channel. Is I say, all right, I'm going to do C Lydian, C major, C Mixolydian, C Dorian, right? I'm just sort of adding a flat to it as it goes down. We've done that so much on this channel. I'm not going to do it right now, but the modes are kind of the scale version of what we just did, right? Maybe I'll do a little bit of it. What I do, A, so. Those are all the A major diatonic modes, right? And then you could also do them. Those are all the A modes, right, in order of sharps to flats. So you can do them either of those ways, and you can do a key a day or a starting note a day or whatever you want to do, and you'll have them in no time. But okay, now let's talk about licks. What are you going to play when you play a solo? Well, you can make up a melody, right? But the melody has component parts, and those are parts that you must have practiced. And that's what we've been doing this whole time. We've been saying, okay, well, what might I want to play? What are some sounds that I might want to hear? Well, sometimes I hear pieces that go up by normal intervals, like what we call a tertian stack, right? A diatonic stack of thirds. I might hear an ascending perfect fourth, like a 5 to a 1 chord, right? That's something that I hear melodically. I might hear a T-do, right? A major 7 to the tonic. I might hear that, so I might hear a half step or a whole step coming down into the tonic, or a half step coming down into the major third from the fourth, right? There's a lot of normal sounds that we hear in tonal music that we just practiced all of that, right? So now, but I still need like more than that. I need like maybe there's a melody that I want to play. And so, and the melody is going to be made out of licks. So there's two options here that I like to kind of interchange. And so if I'm doing all my modes, I might play all of my licks. So I have a lick book. I wish it was here in front of me. I thought it was, but sometimes I put it away because I have too much on my stand. And that looks to be the case today. So anyway, it doesn't matter. I can think of a bunch of them. So they're all stolen from recordings that I like. And that's one way to do it, is just steal from your favorite things, because those are your favorite sounds, right? And then practice them so that they might one day come out in your solos. So for instance, we were doing A before, so I'm going to just stick with A. And I'll play, a lick could be a whole chunk of a melody, like several phrases, or it could just be one little thing. And usually the smaller the better, but I'll play some different length ones. Let's see. So the first one, well, I'm not sure if I can still identify where they're from, actually. It's written on my lick book. That's the way I can go listen to it. But there's one from Daybreak. There's one from But Not For Me with Chet Baker. There's one from just a guy I used to know that played in Syracuse a lot. I'll see if I can remember that one. There's some from Ernie Watts. A lot of good ones from Ernie Watts. He's an incredible saxophone player. But anyway, let's see if we can play a couple. So what I do is I start them on A if I'm doing my modes. I just keep doing starting on, and I do the licks. So there's a couple of licks there that I have to figure out by ear every time. But I don't, if I need to like sit down and write them out, that's fine for a little while. But I really need to be able to play them by ear, but play them just out of nowhere. And so I might want to do them a couple of times. So that's one way to practice this, right? Just practice licks that you like, because you're not going to just spontaneously invent licks on the bandstand, more than likely, especially in a jazz context. You're going to play things that you know the sound of, because that's how it works, right? That's how your brain works. If you can hear spontaneously new sounds that you've never practiced, then go ahead and play them. But I have to practice the sounds that I want to come out the bell. So the other way that I can do it is just to write a melody. And so this is my favorite way, because I'm going to borrow from stuff that I definitely already know, but I'm going to test my metal, so to speak, in METTEL metal. Yeah, METTLE, that's what I meant. And just see, like, maybe I'll be in the wrong key for that piece, but I trust the interval practice and the scale practice enough that I think I'll probably get it, right? And that's really what's going on in the lick practice too. But now I'm just gonna try to improvise for, I don't know, a minute or two, and I'm just gonna play It'll sound a lot like excerpts that you know probably, because that's a lot of what I listen to, especially lately. It might sound like etudes that you know if you're a trumpet player. It might sound like other pieces that you know that are not for trumpet or orchestral or whatever. And I'll try to vary up the style. So it might start off like sort of sprightly and bouncy, and then it might get a little more lyrical, and maybe I'll change the mode, right? So I'm just going to play whatever I want for, I don't know, let's say a minute and a half or so. Let's see if I can make it that long. And let's see where it goes. So we played some stuff, right? And you might have noticed some excerpts in there. You certainly noticed like a Charlier or a Conconi etude in two different spots. And it's just whatever comes to mind. And I try to play in different keys. I try to stay in bad keys mostly, but then I brought it back to like C major, right? So that's another way to do it, is just to practice making sounds that you like, that you can hear, that you can execute. And the simpler you start, the more success you'll have early on, but then you want to push yourself right away. You want to say, oh, okay, well, I know I can do that starting on G, but can I do it starting on A, right? And not the same melody, but can I like do a similar kind of riff on, maybe it's just like variations on the etude that you're playing this week. That'd be a great thing to do. I could even maybe do that if I'm prepared. I have the Charlier book, as a matter of fact, the old one. So if I pick an etude out of here, right? Let's pick one that everybody knows. Not number 2, which is number 5, but maybe a different. Oh yeah, okay. Let's play this one. So, and essentially, this is combining the two things together, right? I'm just going to play. I'm going to figure out what the licks are that comprise this etude, and then I might want to play them different ways. Okay, so that's an easy one, right? I can play that in basically any key, but what is it? It's 1, and then the major third, and the 4th, and the 5th, and then it goes back down in a little triad. We've practiced all that. So I could play that down a step, right? What if I change the mode? What if I decide to make it minor? Okay, yeah, if I can hear it, then I can play similar things, right? So I could do this whole piece this way and just work out. That's the first lick of this piece. So if I want it to sound like this etude, I might use that lick. I could also play, we didn't really do a lot of this, but I can play the whole thing upside down or backwards, right? What if we did it upside down? just like normal. So there's a couple ways to think about this, right? If I play it upside down, what if does that mean I start on the top note of the lick and then play it the same kind of diatonic stuff? So let's see if I can do that. Right, so that's sort of just a non-chromatic inversion, let's call it, right? A diatonic inversion. So I'm playing all the same intervals even, but I'm not, if I do it chromatic inversion, right, then I'm actually playing, well, I have to have a start note, but let's start on G, it only goes a fifth, and here we go. That's a chromatic inversion, right? So I can do all these things. I can chop and screw it all I want so that it makes all kinds of other sounds that then I can practice. And we've only worked on one lick here. We haven't even done all the cool stuff, right? I could do it backwards, right? How about that? It's an entirely new sound. I can do it backwards and inverted. Oh boy, this is going to be tough, but let me see if I can do that. So whatever, right? I can do this all day. And so now what am I using? How do I know what to do next? I'm just taking my good old 12-tone, 12 like serial manipulation strategies. So you've got retrograde, which is backwards. You've got inversion, which is upside down, basically the same intervals but backwards. We have an extra one that they don't have, which is diatonic inversion, so that I can play the whole thing but just upside down within itself, right? So that I could even do that diatonically, not with these notes, but with starting on G and going down, but by diatonic third and by a diatonic step, right? Let's see what that would sound like. Yeah, it's pretty basic sound, but these are all from the same two bars of the first two bars of the Charlier here. So we've got that, and then we've got retrograde inversion, which is backwards and upside down, basically, right? And I can do that all day. And if you really want to get into it, you can do a Davies square, and you can chop it all up into pieces and have that rewritten into a new matrix, and then steal from that the interval structure, and then find some other new notes. I mean, there's limitless ways that you can come up with sounds to practice, but most of them are going to be intervals that we've practiced. They're going to look like triads or maybe ascending fourths or fifths sometimes. They're going to be scales. Even if they're not major or minor scales, they might be one of the modes, which is kind of a major or minor scale depending on what mode it is. Or it could be a constructed scale like octatonic or hexatonic, and those are all ones we practice in the modes. If you really want a great scale book, what is it called? The Thesaurus of Scales is, oh gosh, I just saw it the other day. But scales, it's basically a comprehensive, every scale that you could play, but only starting on C, and then you have to transpose it. But there's over 3,000 scales in that book. I wish I could remember the name of the author, but it won't be hard to find if you look up Thesaurus of Scales. Oh gosh, Slonimsky is the guy's name. My dad's typing in the chat as we speak, I'm sure. But Slonimsky is the guy, and it's different than you might think. It's extrapolation, interpolation, infrapolation, and extrapolation or something. I might have said one of those twice, but there's 4 things that he does to scales basically, and so you can think of it as, you know, just do what it says on the page, and if you like that sound, then practice it in every starting note, right? Just like the modes. But anyway, yeah, I mean, practicing this way is always musical. And I might not feel like I'm in the best shape because we just kind of started playing, but sometimes you have to do that too. And it's good to, yep, I told you he was going to type in the chat. Slanimsky it is. But just making up melodies this way is really good for you, right? And then when you look at music, hopefully you can start to see the sounds that it represents and not just fingerings and directions, right? That's not what sounds are. They are in a direction and they do need to have a fingering, but they're sounds, plain and simple. And so you have to be able to hear them accurately. And that's what's going to help you read the best. It's what's going to help you decide musically what to play the best. And so even if you don't want to be a great improviser, that's okay. It'll help you just to improvise a little bit every day or every week. Will help you a lot with just reading music, right? Okay, and then there's one last thing we didn't talk about, which is substitutions. What do you do if you want to play out and sound cool? In a jazz context now, we're saying. Well, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but basically you have to be able to hear so well in these key areas, in these licks, in these things that we're practicing, that you can hear outside of the changes a different change, if that makes sense. So it doesn't make sense, I guess. But so let's say I'm playing and I've got, oh gosh, let's see. I'll play the but not for me little chunk of stuff. So it sounds like this. Right? That's just that much. So what key is that in? It's kind of in the key of F, right? It's really just like F pentatonic, but okay. So let's say I get that change and I want to play that lick, but I want it to sound really exotic. Well, okay, then what if I hear it? This would be hard. I wish I had a piano that I could play with, and like play it and then play. So, okay, here's what we'll do. I want you to keep in your mind this triad. Okay? Now, da 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 da, you're going to keep that in your mind, with especially this A and this C for me, right? Da da. And let's say I want to play it like a tritone substitution in this case, right? So what do? Well, I just play it a tritone higher or lower. Da da da, remember. So that would sound really weird, right? But I have to be able to hear in that key while I'm also in the room hearing an F major chord. For me, I want to be able to play in the key of B, if that makes sense, right? So that takes a lot of concentration, and there's no magic trick here, and there's no like math to do. I mean, I'm describing it that way because that's how it functions, but you have to be able to hear in the new key over the other key, and to make sure that that's the sound you actually want. So when you want to play out, you just have to really trust your fingers and your ear to be able to hear out. And the best way to do it, I found, is to just practice the same way we did our old jazz system. I'm going to play the wrong scales over the regular changes to a tune, and make sure that I can start to hear in that substitute key. And it doesn't have to be a tritone substitute either. I could do it on the chromatic median. So what if I play an A major instead of F major, right? Let's see what that sounds like. So. So that's basically all there is to that, is you got to really trust what you hear. There's one of my favorite improvisers, taught at Eastman for many years, and his name is going to escape, Clay Jenkins. And he does this super duper cool thing. I mentioned him for this specific reason, right? I have a lot of favorite improvisers, but But he does this really cool thing where he can play what is essentially like bebop, like rhythm changes, or you could kind of call it Coltrane changes, and he does it as a substitution. So he just kind of floats into this substitution area, and then he just plays the changes, but all off by the same amount and like super fast. So he's doing Coltrane changes over the real change, over the substitute changes for the real changes that are all off by the same parallel interval, and then he just kind of undoes it. And it sounds so completely oblivion like out that you can't understand it, and your mind explodes, right? And he just does it by ear. He just knows that sound, and he knows those fingerings and changes. He's practiced those licks so much. And it's not the same lick every time. He has a billion licks, right? It's whatever comes to him next, but he's practiced it, you better believe. So anyway, shout out to Clay Jenkins. He's great. But okay, well, that's enough for now. It's been a long time, an hour and a half. And we've done a bunch of intervals. We've done sound, time, intonation, style, flexibility, range, consistency, some of those more than others. But we've done a bunch of intervals. We've done set class groups, diatonic groups. I didn't sort of talk about that a lot, but we did sort of get into it with the not transposition, although that's still the right word, but the things that we did to our licks, right? Backwards, forwards, upside down. Transmogrification, maybe, that we did to those. So that's kind of what the diatonic groups would be. We did triads, we did chords, we did modes, we did licks, we did melodies, and we talked about substitutions. So that's plenty for today. But yeah, consider, if you're wanting to play more by ear, consider doing these things every single day. Maybe after you warm up and not as a warm up. But if you just don't have time, or a lot of I used to watch all the jazz majors in college, and they never warmed up. They just did stuff like this, and I always thought, man, I wouldn't be able to do that. I'd never be able to play trumpet good, But they hear so well after doing all these exercises that it sort of substitutes for, they may not focus on the same sort of like orchestral forward sound. It's not really appropriate for jazz, right? And they may not all do, a lot of people do long tones, but some people just pick up the horn and start doing other stuff, and that works for them, right? So they might not be as fundamentals focused, but if you think about what their job is, they're focused on the fundamentals of improvisation, which is what we talked about today. And that's fine. I don't think you have to choose. I think you can do both. But anyway, that'll do it for me, because I'm treading onto thin ice as I talk about that. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I will try to do this I think I can do this next Friday. But if you have topics, as always, bring them up. Robbie wants to know why there's a fourth valve on piccolo trumpet. That's an old inside joke between the two of us. I thought about it on Wednesday because I had to demonstrate a piccolo trumpet, and I was like, I don't want to do that. And I know Robbie, if he was here, would make me. So thanks, Robbie. And but anyway, I'll see you next time. Let me know if you have some topics that you want me to cover, and I'd be happy to consider them. And probably I almost always do them. So just send me an email or comment while I'm on. All right. See you next time.